What the media expects from an author. This episode, part 1 of our discussion with former magazine editor Lindsay Williams.
If you have a publicist who's sending press releases consistently, but is writing them in a way where there's a fresh angle every 6 weeks or however often it is, it's important because it keeps your product in front of the media.
I'm Chris Well, and this is DIY Author. You're an author. Maybe you're taking the traditional route. Maybe you've chosen an independent path. Or maybe you want the best of both worlds. Wherever you want to go as a writer, DIY Author is here to help you on your journey with advice, encouragement, and practical tips. Because do it yourself doesn't have to mean do it alone. Welcome to DIY Author. I'm your host, Chris Well. This episode features the first half of a conversation I had with former magazine editor Lindsay Williams. In fact, Lindsay and I are both former magazine editors and former coworkers, and recently we've started creating custom press kits for authors. So to help authors understand how a member of the media thinks, we decided to compare notes, on the record, about our experiences as members of the media, including how good press materials make a good impression, the importance of multiple points of contact, and how an author gets ready for the media. Before we get to that discussion, I want to make sure you know about our free download. We have a free checklist for you that outlines the 18 essentials that every author should have before contacting the media. To grab your free copy of that checklist, go online to bit.ly.com/media-checklist. Before you get in touch with reporters, bloggers, reviewers, and other members of the media, learn what the media expects from a professional author website. Once again, that address is bit.ly.com/media-checklist. And now, here's the first part of my conversation with Lindsay Williams. And my guest now is Lindsay Williams. She is a freelance writer, and she also has served as an editor for a magazine and also for digital media. Lindsay, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And just before we kind of get into discussing her career, and also we're going to have a conversation about how authors can talk to the media. To kind of frame the conversation, I'll explain that we both have a background as freelance writers and as editors, and so it's my intention is for this to be a little more of a back and forth. Although if it turns out that Lindsay has all the great answers, I'm fine with that. And then the other thing to frame it is DIY Authors recently launched a product where we create media kits for authors. And so what the heart of this conversation will be, we will be talking about the components of that kit and whether or not you, listener, whether or not you purchase this kit from us, or you make one for yourself, or you hire somebody else to do it. We believe these are important, and so we're going to talk about the components and why we feel they're important from our perspective as editors and freelance writers and members of the media. So just to start out, Lindsay, why don't you let's find out about you. How did you get started as a writer and also an editor?
Well, growing up, I always had an interest in writing. It was something that I always loved and experimented with. And then when I went to college, I actually decided to go into journalism. And so I have a journalism degree. And right after I graduated from college, I moved to Nashville the December after I graduated in May. And I actually started as an editorial assistant at CCM Magazine, a Christian music magazine here in town, and it was in print then. And so I started there, and I spent 4.5 years there, and I learned so much from my time there, from the people I met, and just so much about magazine publishing, so much about writing. I grew so much as a writer, learned from the people around me, and I also grew so much as an interviewer and as an editor there, and I sort of worked my way up, and I became the managing editor of the print magazine, and then when the print magazine ceased publication, I became the editor of the online digital magazine, after my 4.5 years there, I actually worked in book publishing for 2.5 years at Thomas Nelson on the marketing side of things. And after that, I struck out on my own as a freelancer. And for the past almost 2 years, I've been doing full-time freelance work. The whole time I was at Thomas Nelson, I did freelance writing on the side, but I've been doing it officially full-time almost 2 years. And so now I write for a variety of magazines and online publications, mostly doing feature writing, but I occasionally do other stuff that veers from that. So it's been sort of this long journey of writing.
Now, when you say feature writing, do you mean that you were writing it for the publication, or do you mean that you are writing it for clients?
Both. Mainly, I do a lot of profiles as far as feature writing is concerned. So I interview a lot of artists, authors, actors. The majority of the stuff I do, since I do live in Nashville, is music related. That's where the majority of my contacts were from when I first started and when I first moved to town, and so kind of from there I built my business and built my clients. I do also have a variety of clients. So in addition to writing like feature stories and reviews for magazines and websites, I do a lot of press writing too, like press releases and artist bios. Every time an artist puts out an album, they have to have a new bio written that they use to send to the media. And so I write a lot of those. I also do a lot of just kind of one-off things, writing marketing copy, and I do some editing on some kind of one-off books, and I also do some editing for a publishing house in town who basically has me look over their catalog copy. So it's a variety of things.
Now, as an editor, you would have received many press kits and press materials. How much of what you saw during that time informs how you approach creating those kinds of materials now?
Sure. Until I was actually freelancing full time, I didn't realize how invaluable that experience was. And now I'm sort of on the other side of it, but I think it's given me a better understanding for what editors want, what they don't have time for, what mistakes not to make, how to craft a pitch that's effective. And also, I think it's just given me insight into how editors work, and also just relationally how to get to know an editor, how to approach an editor. So it's sort of interesting having seen both sides of it. It's definitely my time as an editor has definitely, I think, helped me become a better writer and a better media person in general.
Now, when you were at CCM, was that all music related content, or were you at that time also, were you getting stuff from publishers, from authors, from other kinds of people?
The majority of the stuff was music related, but at the time we had a book column, and then that column sort of also evolved into just an entertainment column in general. So we would get pitches and information from authors and other distributors who were working on movies and DVDs and any kind of faith-based releases like that. So it was definitely a variety of things.
And so a lot of your stuff that you dealt with was music related, but over the years, I've been at specifically book related magazines or magazines that are lifestyle magazines. And I found that of all of the different kinds of press kits I've received, and all the times I've been contacted by people who wanted, they wanted to be in my news column, they wanted to be have their client interviewed or a story done. The music people and the movie people were the two that really understood the importance of creating these kinds of materials for the editors, and that the book people, even though they work with words, never seem to understand that.
That's ironic, right?
Yeah. Was that your experience too, or did you not see that as much?
Yeah, it was definitely my experience. And I think I even saw more of it when I worked at Thomas Nelson. Ironically enough, we would hire a lot of publicists to work on our titles who also had music backgrounds. They might not have done as many books or worked as many books, but they knew how to do PR well. And so we would hire them to work on some of our projects. But yeah, that's definitely been the case. And I think there are a lot fewer, it seems like there are a lot fewer book publicists out there than there are music and movie publicists. And certainly a very small number, I think, who know how to actually execute an effective PR campaign for a book.
The standard is so much higher in terms of they understand the importance of multiple points of contact. They understand multiple kinds of content. They understand it's not just one press release that says this product exists. I can think of the better publicists in music. In fact, I can think of one group in particular where the publicist they had would think of a different reason to send something about that group about every 6 weeks. And so I'm hoping with DIY out there as we continue to develop these kinds of materials about and so even like the kit we're creating, we are doing a press release in the kit. But I'm going to be encouraging our constituents that they really need to think about multiple press releases in the same way. It's not 6 times saying, I have a book.
Right.
It's every 6 weeks or so, you find a completely different point of entry to the brand or the book or whatever it is. And with publishers, it's so rare to find a publisher that even makes a kit at all.
It's true, yeah. And I think going back to what you said about press releases, I think consistency is the key because as a media person, I get, probably 20 press releases in my inbox a day. And that's interspersed among all my other email. And at the end of the day, I don't have time realistically to read every word of every press release that comes through my inbox. If you have a publicist who's sending press releases consistently, but is writing them in a way that's where there's a fresh angle every 6 weeks or however often it is, I think it's important because it keeps your author, your product in front of the media. And it's kind of like a little nudge, like, hey, I'm over here. Maybe that last angle I sent to you didn't really appeal to you, but maybe this will, so it's really important.
Well, you bring up a good point that I had forgotten that, when your inbox is full and, if you're getting stuff in the mail and all of these emails, either you may not see, like if somebody sends 6 press releases that are different, you may not see all 6 of them. Or you may see some of them at a time that, you are at the wrong part of the editorial cycle for this to fit in.
Right.
And you say, gosh, I would have used this if I'd gotten it sooner or if there'd been a hole or whatever.
Right.
And so the reason to do the 6 different things is you're trying to, it's like the editor's on a raft going down the river and these are 6 different opportunities to get on that raft.
Yeah, that's a great
point. And 5 of those, it may not be your fault, it may not be his fault or her fault, but you may miss each other. And so the reason you do 6 is that you have 6 times as many chances of getting on that raft with the editor.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And now that I've started that analogy, I have no idea where the editor's going in that raft, but I really should have thought that through. But I really want to encourage our listeners here. You really need to think about the multiple points of entry, multiple contacts, multiple unique opportunities for a person in the media to want to hear about what you're doing or who you are, but in a way that's not annoying and you're not just hammering the same message over and over.
Right. And that's a delicate balance, and I think it's hard to achieve that, So I think in one way, that's why it's important for the the author to stir up opportunities to talk about, and to make sure that whatever they're doing, whether it's online or whether it's, other interviews, that they're talking about things, and that they're doing things to stir interest around their book.
And, and I hadn't really thought of it in these terms, but like the kit that we've designed, that we will be creating for some authors is also multiple points of entry. It's 3 kinds of bios, it's 2 kinds of articles, and a press release, which means that's, what is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is 6. That is your 6 chances to get on the raft.
Right.
If we stick with the raft, whatever the raft is. What are some ways for an author to be ready for the media? And when we say the media, that really is anybody with an audience. It's a blogger, it's a person at a magazine, it's a person at a radio station, it's a person at a television station, it's a reviewer on Amazon. It's anybody, anywhere that you are trying to approach and say, hey, I exist, I have a book, please tell your audience about me. So as our listeners are thinking about approaching the media or being ready for media attention in that way, we were looking at content and technology and kind of the mindset. So as we look at those 3, I'm searching for an analogy. I don't have an analogy for that. What are some
3
ways?
paddles on the raft?
There you go.
I don't know.
Yes.
Well, no, I guess that would be the reverse because the media is on the raft. I don't know.
Yeah. But the real question in all of this babbling is, what are some ways for an author to be ready for the media?
I think an author sort of needs to have their quote unquote elevator pitch nailed down to where, anyone, whether it's your mom or the mailman or, a high profile magazine editor, when they ask you the question, what is your book about? Who are you as an author, that you can immediately answer that question concisely and clearly. Whether you're telling this to someone in an interview or you're writing this out, or, whatever form of communication you use, I think you have to have a very short elevator pitch of who you are and what your book is about that you're currently promoting. And second, I think you have to sort of put yourself in the shoes of the interviewer. Think about what questions are they going to be asking. And for the most part, you can do a pretty good job of gauging what interviewers are going to ask. When you do interviews, no matter what the medium is, they're all going to want to know about how you first started writing, where you developed your love of writing. They're all going to want to know about other authors who influenced you and your work. They're going to want to know what the motive is behind your passion for writing. They're going to want to know what your book is about, and they're going to want to know more about your central characters. They're going to want to know, if it's nonfiction, they're going to want to know about the topic and why you're interested in that particular topic and why you have credibility to write about a particular topic. So I think you really need to do some legwork ahead of time just to kind of nail your answers. Write them out if you have to. Bring some notes with you. Especially, you definitely have the opportunity to do this on a phone interview. And I would say 90% of the interviews that I do for my work, I do them over the phone. So you have a really great opportunity to have some notes in front of you when you're talking to a media person. And I guess as far as technology is concerned, really, I think it's as simple as just having a phone that gets good reception. I also do occasionally Skype or FaceTime interviews, but more often than not, it's straight up phone interview or in-person interview. So I think really the key to that is just being personable and being conversational and just being well prepared ahead of time.
And whenever I'm talking to somebody about conducting interviews, like whenever I'm teaching somebody how to do interviews, I always say you've got a good interview if you got an anecdote out of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that a lot of these media, what they really want is not the facts as much as they want the stories.
Sure.
So I would say to, the listener, when you're thinking about share whatever book it is that you have, whatever if you have short stories, if you have a memoir, if it's a business book, if it's a cookbook, figure out what the stories are behind what you did. So, because that's the thing that engages people, is if you can tell the story behind the story.
Absolutely. And I'll add on to that too, that it's really easy to tell the same stories over and over, especially if you have back-to-back interviews and the interviewers are asking a lot of the same questions. So I would say, come up with enough that you can kind of pull from a well of things so that you're not sort of regurgitating the same information over and over. Some things are going to be the same no matter what, but media are definitely grateful when you have something sort of new and fresh to give them. Not that you have to do something exclusive to every media outlet, but it's just good to sort of either tell a different anecdote or tell the story in a fresh way for, whoever you're talking to.
Are you struggling to get more attention for your book? Do you wish members of the media would help spread the word? Do you want them to tell their audience about you or your book? Then you need a media kit on your website that makes the job of media professionals easier. DIY Authors Digital Media Kit Service for Authors will create a custom digital media kit just for you that includes 3 kinds of author bios, an interview article suitable for press use, a Q&A with the author, a press release, and an audio interview. These kits are custom made by media professionals. For more details or to download a sample media kit, just go to bit.com/DIYA-kit. Before you contact the press or bloggers or reviewers, make certain that you're ready for them with your own digital media kit. This has been DIY Author. Please visit us online at DIYauthor.com and be sure to sign up for our email newsletter. If you enjoyed this program, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. Until next time, keep writing. And remember, do it yourself doesn't have to mean do it alone.